Hey revolutionaries, I'm excited to bring you this week's episode with Melissa Cole, where we're talking the future of nursing. Yes, the future of nursing. You know, Melissa has an incredible story. As you might have guessed, she's a nurse, but she recently chose to leave her mid-career executive job at one of the most prominent hospital systems in the United States, University Hospital Systems in Cleveland here. And she chose to go back to school and to get her Doctorate in Nursing Practice, her DNP, which she taught me is called a terminal degree. Thank you, Melissa. I didn't know that. So the highest degree that you can get in your field. And she got recruited away to start a nursing school. A nursing school as she sees the future of nursing. You know, personally, she's the future of nursing. And now she's training new students with what I think is a groundbreaking vision, incorporating business and entrepreneurship into nursing programs. And Melissa was an attendee on my recent trip to Israel that I mentioned in the last episode that was coordinated by her new employer now, the Boler College of Business at John Carroll University. So shout out to Elad Greneau, the dean, and all the folks at Boler. What an incredible trip. You're going to hear a little bit about it in this episode. But stay tuned because there's more content built around Israel and my experiences and my take on angel investing and the venture scene and the startup scene in Israel coming. So stay tuned for that. But before we get there real quick, I just want to say a big thank you again for everyone who continues to listen to the podcast. If you love this episode, remember to share it with someone. If you want to show your love for the podcast directly, remember you can always go to Linktree/JimJim99. And of course, Linktree is linktr.ee/JimJim99. And there you can find links for the podcast, find links to donate. You can show your love at Buy Me a Coffee. You know where to go, folks. So again, thanks for listening. Now let's get right to this week's episode with Melissa.
Welcome to Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, the show that explores reinvention in the digital age as it relates to career, creativity, and technology. Stay tuned for interviews with professionals, entrepreneurs, and creatives that have reimagined success and are making a pivot. If you'd like to listen to the entire back catalog, visit JimJim'sReinventionRevolution.com for instant access. And now, here's your host, Jim Jim.
All right, hey everybody, hey, it's Jim Jim. Welcome to episode 105 of Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. I'm talking today with Melissa Cole, the newly minted Dr. Melissa Cole, in fact, and we're talking about the future of nursing. So, Melissa, welcome to the Reinvention Revolution.
Thank you, Jim.
Hey, wait, how did you pronounce my name again? That's not
Jim.
Exactly how you've been pronouncing
Hi, Jim.
it. Okay.
Jim.
All right, great. I love that. And for, any of my Thai friends out there, you might recognize what that means. But for now, we'll just pretend it's just another nickname of mine, another Gym-related nickname of mine.
Okay.
Jim. Anyways, Melissa.
Do you want to tell the story?
I'm super. maybe later. Maybe like in we'll do like a little after podcast blurb or something, and we'll explain the meaning of that. But I'm just super happy to get reconnected with you because we were just in Israel last time I saw you or talked to you. We were in Israel. That was a couple of weeks ago now. So people listening to the podcast knew I was traveling out there, and you're going to start hearing some content based around that. So I'm excited to bring you that because that was a phenomenal trip. Awesome. We'll get to that in a second here. But as we kick it off here, I mentioned that you were a newly minted doctor, and I wanted to mention what that is of, because it's a specialty or terminal degree, as I learned this term from you. I never knew this term.
Yeah, not to be confused with a terminal illness.
Yeah, exactly. But it's a terminal degree, meaning it's the highest level that you can get, and it's a different type of doctor level degree. It's not a PhD. It's
Correct.
A Doctor of Nursing Practice.
Yeah,
DNP. I had never heard of this, and just if you'll allow me here 1 second, I just want to let people know here. That it was from the Francis Payne Bolton School of Nursing at Case Western Reserve University, and they pioneered the world's first nursing doctorate in clinical practice.
Yes.
And that led to the creation of the Doctor of Nursing Practice degree. So this is one of the reasons why when I met you on this trip to Israel, we became fast friends, I believe, because you like doing stuff. And this is a practical degree, a clinical degree, right? So it's not
Yeah.
a theoretical degree, it's hands-on. So I think it's super cool. And so tell people the story behind this, because you had this cohort that went through and how you got approached and how you decided to even do it.
Yeah. And this weekend, because I just received my pinning and my certificate, I actually graduated in January, but all the celebration kind of happened in May. And so it really was a time to really reflect, I think, on this journey. And it wasn't one, I mean, Jim, I was totally happy with my master's in science and nursing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm a practicing nurse practitioner in emergency medicine, doing my thing. I was, in leadership. I was vice presidents and system directors. And I was like, this is great. I mean, I didn't see any reason really to go back to school.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the opportunity through my job at university hospitals where they offered a group of us to go in and sit in for 1 week on a 1 week intensive in their DNP program.
I see.
And I went with a few of my colleagues and I met Dr. Joyce Fitzpatrick and Dr. Marianne Shaughnessy, who ended up being very impressionable and inspiring women in my life that started this journey. But I sat with them in a room, and Dr. Joyce Fitzpatrick was leading the class for that week. But the colleagues in the class were from all around the world. So we had a nurse leader from Saudi. We had a nurse leader from New York Presbyterian, a couple of them. We had another nurse leader from North Carolina, a few of us from Cleveland, another one from Abu Dhabi, right? And so it was really that network and learning and hearing from all of them that was actually very inspiring. And I was humbled and sort of like, maybe it is time for me to go back to school, because I feel like when you're in that school mode, it challenges you, it inspires you, it sort of begins to culminate things for you. So it was less about the degree, but more about the experience, I think, at that point for me.
Right.
And actually, so COVID ended up happening. This was like, in January of 2019. By March of 2019, or that was January of 2018. I don't remember. It was, but about a year later, it was a while later, like honestly, working through COVID. I don't know which years are which anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of a blur. It really is.
I think for everybody. And so we were in the midst of COVID. I had the opportunity over that year to work with Marianne K. Shaughnessy more. She was a nurse philanthropist. She always was talking about how nurses have kind of this holistic view, and we need to be better at not just having seats at the table, but being able to articulate our stories and have people listen to our perspective. And so she actually passed away in March of 2019, about a week before we went shut down. And it was devastating for me. I mean, she was an incredible nurse leader that had a great message, and she wasn't real traditional in a sense. And so she was someone I could relate to. And so by June, I hadn't really thought about it at all. We were in the middle of, trying to get out guidelines, get PPE, we were trying to take care of everyone, right?
The care providers,
the patients. And Dr. Joyce Fitzpatrick called me, and I'll never forget this day. It was June, and said, we are starting the Marianne K. Shaughnessy Nurse Leader Academy, and we want to start a DMP with a focus in executive leadership to help prepare chief nurse executives. And we'd love for you to be a part of it. And we were able to find some scholarship dollars to assist you. And you can invite 5 of your colleagues from UH to join you.
Okay. All right. I just want to jump in here real quick, because this is the part that amazed me, that I'm like, what? I don't even know this could even happen. So, CASE is a leading, higher educational institution across the country, across the world, in many respects, especially for healthcare, medical doctors, med school, et cetera. they're such forward thinking, and they have these, dollars from their donors, from their, foundation, et cetera, that are available. And so this is how they wanted to jumpstart this program. They found the right person in you, and they knew you'd probably be a good, maybe help push your other colleagues into this, since you probably got excited about it. This is kind of mind blowing to me that this could even happen in this way. This is what I want people to kind of hear about, learn about, if they're listening out there in their own communities and thinking about, hey, how can I develop some new programs, because this is going to be leading up to your new job that you just taken recently, which we'll talk about in a second here. But this is kind of a wild thing. What did you think about when she approached you and said, I have scholarship dollars. I want you to get more of your colleagues. We want to really kick off this program in a big way. Like, what did that mean to you, or what did you think about it even?
Honestly, I had just ordered 1,500 body bags not 2 months prior, because we had no idea what was going to happen. And I mean, Jim, I just started crying. I just to have someone believe in you, right, in that way. But then also from a philanthropy, I mean, I'm a Miller Scholar, and this is someone who values being able to support, nurses to get higher ed, and, just what an incredible opportunity. So at that point, right, I was like, I'm all in. I'm not just a little in, like I am all in, right? So it was an amazing experience. And, the program I did it in 2.5 years. The rest of my cohort did it in 3. But, throughout it, we were trying to do this through COVID while also leading health systems. Right. And, there were some really trying times. Like, I'm not going to lie. There were times like, I'm like, maybe I should just quit. Like, I don't know that I can balance my family, school, work was 15, 16-hour days sometimes. I mean, it was a rough time, but now that I'm on the other side, I'm so glad I stuck with it.
Yeah, well, it's amazing. And this is just one of the little nuggets that, as I met you in our trip in Israel, I kept uncovering all these different layers of things that were going on with you. And I'm like, wow, this is wild. I knew that early on that I wanted to have you on the podcast at some point, but I just wanted to keep talking to you and not let you know that until we got back. So that I wouldn't muddy the waters or anything like that. I just wanted to get to know you a little bit. But thanks for sharing that, because that's just kind of a wild thing that you don't hear about very often, and that's really neat. Forward-looking university finds the right people to be in this cohort, so that's neat. All right, but there's so much more going on with you. Okay. Yeah. That's just sort of the nugget to kick it off here, because that just happened recently, your graduation, which was cool. But how did this just happen to dovetail with this new opportunity that you're involved in now just recently? And that's, finally getting here to the future of nursing, and your innovative role in kicking off a new nursing school at locally here in Cleveland at John Carroll University. And so, did this coincide with the vision to start that school? Who approached you? When did you get the degree first? Did the degree come after? To be this higher level executive at a university, usually you have to have this terminal degree. Yeah. So how did all that come together, and how did that work? How did they get in touch with you?
I was connected through colleagues, but from a different angle, right? Being a senior level executive, a nurse executive within the health system, the college, to consider starting a nursing program, needed to have support from the local health systems that we would support clinical rotations and the learning and training of nurses. So I actually got connected with Jamie, who was their consultant at the time in building this BSN program and providing my level of support and insight into it from the health system side. Okay. And at the time I was pursuing my DNP, I just didn't even put things together really. And honestly, I always thought about, I'll go into academia when I'm ready to retire. Like, it was a retirement strategy, right? It was sort of
was this already in your head that you might be open to that?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I love teaching.
Playground or landscape when you retire or something,
Yeah, exactly. But when you think about, so I have had teaching jobs earlier in my career, clinical instructing and teaching, and that was probably one of the most impactful jobs I've had, because you just touch these lives of the students in such a meaningful way, and not just for the year that you have them, but like I still keep in contact with some of my students that I taught. I mean, we're talking over 15 years ago. So I knew I always wanted to get back into it, but I just wasn't even, thinking about it at the moment. But I did know that I did put it together that like, if I get a terminal degree, if I do want to go into academia later, that's something along the lines that I should consider doing. So I can teach with a master's degree, but you can't hold sort of a higher position in academia without either a PhD or DMP for me in nursing. So actually, it was just very serendipitous that I was sort of supporting this program from the health system side. And then they were looking for a director in nursing and talking about, some bigger vision items. And they asked if I knew anybody who would be interested in the role. And I was actually asking a lot of my colleagues, like, hey, this sounds pretty cool, blah, blah, blah. Right. And it was my husband who was like, Melissa, like, you've always said you wanted to do this. Like, how many opportunities are you going to get to potentially start a brand new nursing program? Why don't you consider it? And I'm like, oh, I should. I'll have my, my DNP. I'll be done in January. Like, I could potentially consider this. So that's kind of how that happened. And I'm so glad I did. I've been in the job now 6 months as the director of nursing and strategic health integration. So building the Bachelor's of Science in Nursing program, you get to put your vision, I think I'm a visionary and I can see how we need to transform healthcare, but also how our nurses are kind of in critical, positions throughout the world to do this. And how can we empower them and create a program that better supports them as they go out from a self-care perspective. And then in my role as director of strategic health integration, really building a larger college of health and looking at other health professions that we need to be part of the team and empowered to transform the healthcare system, which Jim, you and I have talked a lot about, needs a lot of help, right?
It does.
Healthcare is in a position right now. I would say airlines and the healthcare industry during the pandemic both furloughed their teams because we had to cancel electives, et cetera. It kind of toppled the system was already fragile. And that just, started to crumble the foundation in ways I don't think we anticipated. And so now you can't rebuild it the way it was on this crumbly foundation. So we're sort of at this pivotal point in healthcare where we kind of think we need to blow the whole thing up, but that includes regulatory policy, right? All of that. And
oh my gosh. Yeah.
Right.
You're describing it right on. And I just want to kind of infuse the other tsunami of this technology wave.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's like
exactly right.
COVID happened. It was a fragile system, whatever, but simultaneously, the tech is just, geometrically taking off and going crazy. The world's being eaten by software, remote work, and all these things, blockchain and all the things I like to talk about on the podcast. And you're right. Healthcare is one of those systems. Travel is one of those systems, things that are just ripe for reinvention, as I might say. Right. And that's why, again, we got to talk. I'm like, who is this woman? This is I don't have to explain anything to you. This is the kind of people that I like to be around. And one of the reasons why we were on that trip in the first place is because we were, interested in innovative things that were going on in Israel on the trip. But I wanted to come back and just remind everyone. So, you were a very high level executive already within a healthcare system, and you chose to leave really kind of in the heart of your career here. So this is I don't want to diminish that, or if people didn't figure that out when you were describing what happened there. That's a pretty interesting move. And that's kind of, I guess, a lot of the things I like to talk about on the podcast is sort of the mindset of what allows you to keep your mind open for these kind of opportunities or moves. So what was, you said hey, when I retire, I think I'm going to be more interested in doing this. Not necessarily in the moment, not now. I mean, maybe your husband had a little influence there, or maybe you felt it was serendipitous, but was there something else there that sort of got in your head, or maybe it was the pandemic experience or something that's kind of spawned a lot of people to think differently or try other things they thought maybe perceived previously were risky for them?
Yeah.
Where's your mind with it?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think when I boiled it down, I was like, the pandemic really pushed me to think about the work that I do and aligning it back to my purpose. And I think the pandemic, I kind of lost my way a little bit, right? You were just, I was emotionally detached from everything. After I ordered those 1,500 body bags, or the logistics coordinator came and said, how many should I get? And I said, how many can you get? Like, we didn't know what to expect, like get them all, right? It was at that moment, I remember this, like I immediately armored up, in the words of Brene Brown, like I armored up, and I armored up in my work to be able to disengage, so I wasn't like breaking down every day. And, also had to, when you armor up with that, you also armored up in your family. And so I did come out of the pandemic going, what is my purpose? Like, I need to get back to what that is. And in the end, I think I ended up considering that I really want to transform healthcare. I think when you're in this sort of pivot point of this disruption, you can either decide to get, be part of it or let it happen to you, right?
Right.
And I wanted to be part of it. And I think it's really hard to do that in the current health system structure. Not that it can't be done. It's just really challenging because of a lot of the regulatory pressures, the payment structure, right? There's structures that kind of keep it in place. And so, when I thought about what are ways that I can transform the healthcare industry quickly with creativity and some of the things I wanted to do, obviously startup, health tech came to mind. But then as I thought about this educational opportunity, I was like, wait, I could transform the healthcare team of the future. And what better way to transform healthcare than create all these students that have this entrepreneurial mindset, right? That are future focused, empowered, right? Have sort of the tools they need to lead. And, you start building this program. We're going to start with 40 in the fall, 15 that are in their second year, 30 that are in their first year. You double that, right? Before you know it, you've got 200 nurses that are all trained. Wow, the impact then you can begin to have when you've got 200 people pushing on the system, right?
Right.
To transform, and 200 different minds that are creatively thinking about solutions. And so to me, this opportunity aligned with my mission or my purpose to really be transformative, and to really do the right thing and make it better for everyone, clinicians and patients.
Right. I like it. Well, I think that you're so unique in your experience, and that you've gone through the system, you became a nurse, you worked in the field, but then you went into operations. And so that's where you're coming from as an executive in operations, where you really see like, oh my God, you really understand the actual structural challenges within the healthcare system, right? Like you said, you're very versed in like how things get paid, who the customer really is. Is it the insurance company or is it the patient? It's hard to tell sometimes, right? So I really like this approach, but I want to ask you, maybe you can break down a couple specifics for people. One in regard to technology, but one in regard to sort of mindset, vision, or this, entrepreneurial aspect that you're going to infuse. How is it going to be different from your experience when you went into nursing school? What do you think you're going to bring to the party that's really new and different that this new program that you're developing is going to have, that's going to set you apart?
Yeah, so there are three major things that I would say we're hoping we know our program will differentiate in our market. Our students are going to graduate with a bachelor's of science in nursing, but they're also going to have 3 certificates when they graduate. One is going to be in professional development leadership. So they're going to get, over the course of the, 3 to 4 years, They're going to have some of the basics of leadership development, how to write a resume, how to develop your pitch deck, right? How to develop your brand, how to update your LinkedIn profile, like, how to accept and receive feedback, right? Things that are really important skill sets, right? To problem solve. And leadership is an art, right? And a science, and it's different than sort of your nursing or, curriculum. So that's going to be infused in. So we partnered with our career services to add that value to the program. 2, we've partnered with Boler Business College at John Carroll, and we're adding an innovation and entrepreneurship certificate. So one of the things I've been working with Doan on is how do we begin to give them the language around innovation and entrepreneurship? What does that mean? Let's give commonality to it. But 2, we're thinking of things like maybe all of our, our first cohort of nursing students, we make them all have an LLC. And within their 4 years, they've got to learn how to manage their LLC, build it, et cetera. So that is a life skill. Like, I just started an LLC a couple of years ago. I had no idea what I was doing, Jim. Right. But honestly, as a citizen of the United States, of what it means to be in this country, like, we should all know how to run an LLC. And so
100%.
There are 2 things in that. One is potentially this LLC kind of build. The other is nurses have been told we do workarounds all the time, but they're actually doing, honestly, patentable inventions at the bedside that need to be widespread and shared.
I see. That's what you call it.
And we need to teach them that process as well. So what an innovation is, what to do with an idea and how to make it something. So that is another certificate they'll get. And then lastly, they're going to get self-care and resiliency. So we know, and we heard about it every day in the pandemic, that nurses were burnt out. We heard terms like burnout, moral distress, right? Mm-hmm. And so we want our students to not only learn how to put their own oxygen mask on so that they can help others, but that this is critical to their, I want to say, survival, right? In a care profession, and that it's important. It's just as important of learning about microbiology, and it's got to be part of the culture. And so that'll be another certificate, but also it'll be very cultural. And then lastly, and the Future Nurse 2020, 2030, called this out, that basically the nursing profession is a bunch of old white women at this point, right? It's not very diverse. There's not a much gender diversity, ethnic diversity, and inclusion in our profession. And we come from a long line of eating our young. And so we are going to have partnerships with really diverse organizations. We're going to look at our faculty in that lens. We're going to be intentional about our inclusion and diversity initiatives. So we've just partnered with the Cleveland Council of Black Nurses. We're meeting with the Filipino Nurses Association, the Hispanic Nurses Association. Like, we want to make sure that, one, from an ethnic standpoint, our students feel like they belong. But 2, we need diversity in perspectives and gender and, all across the board. And we just haven't done a good job as a profession. So we're going to be really intentional about it.
Right. Well, I like that. As I was listening to you, I was thinking, with these new certificates and these new ideas and this forward-looking kind of understanding of how the world works now, how we're all connected, we're all going to need to be more entrepreneurial because the world's changing so quickly. Got to continue reinventing ourselves. I think that I was just thinking about the diversity part too. That this different approach will attract different students. It's going to attract different people with different mindsets, right? That may have been turned off to nursing before because they're like, oh, they thought it was this one thing that was inside this box.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, it's only for, holding people's hands and, dealing with bedpans or something like that, which is, nurses are so much more than that, certainly these days. But if you had the avenue to grow in these other ways, right, to grow a business, to be an entrepreneur, to have these other avenues available for you to add value, even within a hospital organization, it's pretty phenomenal, really. And like you said, I think there's something, maybe something to your strategy of training new students in terms of affecting the system at large. So that's pretty cool. That's what speaks to me. Like if I was coming out of school right now or high school or whatever, thinking about a career, it's like, yeah, why would I want to limit myself in this way into this,
Yeah.
real narrow experience of life? So that's pretty interesting. All right, good. Well, thanks for sharing that because I just wanted to, know what that, I was just looking at your title here, Director of Nursing and Strategic Healthcare Innovation. At least that's what you have on your LinkedIn profile here for at your newly minted job at John Carroll. So thanks for describing that. I think it's amazing, really. This is you're on the leading edge, I would say. And I've experienced a lot of this innovative stuff in my own career. So for what it's worth, that's what my voice says. Anyways,
I appreciate it. Some people look at when you're in this sort of mindset. Some people look at you like you're crazy, right? And some people
Right.
are like, "Yeah, I totally get it." But yeah, it's funny. And it is. I think we do put people in a box when we think about nursing, and I've certainly have never been in that box. And people have always said, "Wow, you're a nurse," and yeah, you can do a lot of things in nursing. So I think that's a great point.
Right.
Yeah, I think that the thing that came to mind.
Well, it can be a jumping off point. Remember, which we're gonna talk about in a second, for other things, for founding your own company, doing other things. Like, you can be working your career, but it can lead to many, many other things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. You want to finish your point there?
No. I finished it. Yeah, no. I'll beat a dead horse at this point.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, it's exciting for me to see, and that's interesting. And it's coming to one of the biggest niches and opportunities that we have out there for reinvention and innovation is the healthcare system. We're so good at the tech. We're so good at the disease fighting, like the specific technical things. We are, especially in the United States and a few pockets of around the world, that expertise is super high level. I mean, we can really perform miracles, but systematically delivering it, getting the cost wrung out, all those kind of things, it's really like we just mentioned before, it's kind of just crumbling right before our eyes, and we have to kind of get on that and really figure out how it's going to move forward here around the world. Anyways, in this regard, this kind of leads into, I guess, this trip that we were on most recently, which I want to give a shout out to Elad Greneau at the Boler School of Business, John Carroll, also to Ron Mickler and to Scott Allen, because that's how I got connected to being on this trip. Which, for people listening out there, I'm going to do a special solo episode of the podcast. So I'm going to talk about the trip in detail, my experience, how I got on it, and I'm going to go into more detail about some of the angel investing and the venture companies that we visited within Israel. So stay tuned for that. But I wanted to talk about, I haven't even had a chance, Melissa, to talk to you about sort of processing our whole trip and thinking about what stood out to you, because we went to so many places, so many cultural places, so many businesses, healthcare systems. I mean, it was a mind-blowing trip for me by the end of the week. I can't imagine what it was for you, because it was just right in your, sort of wheelhouse of things you wanted to do, maybe partnerships you wanted to make. So I don't even know where to begin to ask you about it. Maybe you can help me out, and maybe with one or two things you can mention that really stuck out or really helped you open your mind about things, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. And I think for the audience, like, being a little Jewish girl here working at a Jesuit university, talking about inclusion and diversity and everything else, right. Going to Israel as, an American Jew has always been sort of this lifelong hope of mine that I would make it, there one day. And, there's always conflict there. So it never seemed like a good time or a safe time to go. And to be able to go on this trip, and I'm not a group trip person. This is the first group trip I have ever been on. But, to be able to go with Elad and his team, but Elad being Israeli, I felt like there's no better opportunity probably to go to Israel than going with someone that's from the country, and we can experience it like wholeheartedly. And that's, I don't know. I felt like I sucked up every moment that I could of that trip. And it's hard to pick my favorite this or my favorite that,
Right.
But I would say two things really stood out to me. One, the culture of the country was just incredible. And I don't think it's something you can replicate anywhere else in the world. I think the loyalty of the citizens, because they serve in the Israeli Defense Force for a minimum of 2 years if you're female and 2 years, 8 months if you're male, creates a sense of loyalty. But also, because there's like war going on the Gaza Strip every day, their tolerance for risk is high. Like they're big risk takers. They're really, they call it chutzpah. They talk about real things. They're really direct. They talk about religion and politics all the time. It's in your face, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's stuff we don't talk about in this country. We're like, oh, what are the two things you don't talk about when you go to the country club kind of thing? Religion and politics. And it was just in your face. And so I think to be present in a place that felt so raw, open, transparent was just probably the thing I fell in love with the most. Mm-hmm. And then to walk among, so that was prevalent in their businesses, how they do business, right? And you're just like, I mean, I was drooling, just like, oh, I wish we could do that, or got to figure it out. So to meet with, the payers, like, they got 4 payers there that are trying to be innovative. So you have the payers that are innovating, you have the healthcare systems that are innovating, and then you have this technology, this health tech that's innovating, and academics. And it's all this ecosystem that is just churning out like amazing innovations all the time. But 90% of them fail.
Yeah. Well, so one of the things, the takeaway, which I'll talk a little bit more about this when I do the solo episode I mentioned about Startup Nation. Israel's known as the Startup Nation, and where they get this mindset of risk taking and how it stems really ostensibly from maybe the predicament historically they're in, their service in the military, the neighbors that they have that they're always on guard, and the size of the country. There's many factors, like you said, it can't be really replicated anywhere else. Israel's just sort of a unique thing that's happened in the world, where they have to look outside of their borders for any opportunity for markets, for any financial growth, et cetera, because there's only 9 to 10 million people within the country. So if they're going to grow or do anything, gain any kind of traction or wealth, their markets are outside the country. And so from day one, they're thinking globally. They're not thinking locally.
Right.
And so that really drives, again, in this other level of risk taking. It reminds me of Australians in a way, where like Australia is so isolated as a country. And when you meet Australians here in the US or around the world, their concept of travel or of being from Australia is like when they leave the country, they leave for 6 weeks at a time. They don't go on vacation for a week because it's so isolated. And so they kind of grow up, again, with this sort of more open risk-taking mentality where, an average American going on vacation for more than a week is like, that's
unheard of.
Incredible. It's unheard of. Like, especially if you're, a business person or having any serious job, like taking off 10 days, it's like, whoa, what are you doing? And we perceive that as risk somehow or whatever,
right?
To do that. But, what you're describing, I had the same feeling. It was so interesting. It was interesting to watch some of the other folks on the trip as well as yourself see, it's like watching you seeing this stuff through your eyes a little bit, just because it's like, man, if this was, in the heart of some of the engineering stuff I was doing, I would have been just like out of my mind. It was very interesting to see. And I knew some of the history, some of the technical history, some of the tech corporations that were over there. That was interesting to me. But and by the way, maybe I'll just let people in on a little bit of this stuff. So because this was in your wheelhouse, when we went to these hospital systems, so we went to Hadassah and Sheba hospital systems, and we saw some startup companies that worked there. We saw this bio house, I think it was called, at Hadassah, that was like a startup accelerator for businesses, for medical related businesses. You were always in these meetings or in the presentations, but you would just oftentimes disappear. Okay. Because you were working some side deals or had some special meetings going on with people. I noticed that. I'm like, man, this is got to be so fun for you to meet these people and to suggest and maybe find some opportunities for yourself while you were there and for the nursing school and, going forward. Has anything kind of come to fruition? Anything you can talk about or?
Oh, yeah. No, well, the one day I wasn't in some special meeting, I actually had to take our tour guide to the emergency department because he tore his quadricep tendon. So I got to see Hadassah Medical Center's emergency department, which, remember, I'm an emergency medicine practitioner. I'm an emergency medicine operator at heart, right? I've run EDs for several years. And so to be able to experience an emergency department in a socialized medicine type country, was just remarkable. That might have been one of the most exciting parts of the journey for me. But I've had follow-up meetings. So we met with the head nurse at Tel Aviv University to talk about both research collaborations as well as how we might be able to set up an abroad experience where our John Carroll nurses actually go to Israel for a week side by side, an Israeli student nurse, and then vice versa, have the student nurse from Israel come to the United States just to have a global experience. So I spoke with Tel Aviv University and also the College of Tel Aviv. So I met with basically their dean of nursing as well. So we've got follow up on both those initiatives. And then I met with Sigal, who is a nursepreneur. Go ahead and tag that line. It's awesome. But she's from Hadassah, and Hadassah is interesting because it is a medical center, like a hospital, but it also is the academic system. So in our country, most hospitals are separate from the academic side. So like Case Western is where physicians and nurses, right, become and get educated. But a lot of the faculty is also the physicians, within the UH or Cleveland Clinic or Metro Health system, right? So they're usually not one and the same, but Hadassah is both those things. So it is a academic arm and a hospital arm. So that was really interesting. And Sigal actually has agreed to come. We're going to host a big healthcare, probably redesign session. We're kind of noodling the name in the fall, and she's going to be coming from Israel over to be our keynote speaker in October. So,
she's agreed to come. Okay,
yeah,
awesome. I think I remember you talking about the possibility.
Yeah.
But, okay, she's coming.
So she has multiple innovations. She does a lot. She's got like 2 master's degrees, a postdoc DMP. I mean, she is well educated, but she also is she's got a lot of chutzpah, as they say. Right. And so she's going to probably be kicking off the whole design session, redesign collaborative that we're looking to start. So it should be pretty cool. We're going to, invite our whole ecosystem of, health tech, health systems, and, academia kind of to the table to really begin to talk about at a really large level, like how we need to redesign.
Is that something that I was just going to ask you about that? Who's invited to that? So is that like just a regional thing? Is it a national thing, a worldwide thing? Who's invited?
Well, it'll probably focus mainly on our region, but we certainly want to expand our reach. One of the companies we're working with is called Agility, and they have customers based out in Portland, Oregon, like Asante Hospital and City of Hope in Los Angeles. So we're hoping to have the folks come from those areas too, because whether you're from the West Coast of the United States or East Coast of the United States, the healthcare problems are pretty much the same, right? I mean, from a global perspective. Now, we all have micro differences, but I think as we're trying to think about a redesign of our healthcare system, it certainly isn't siloed to just the Northeast.
Right. Well, that's right. So you want to get those different perspectives, and you want to know what's happening in these other regions that could be a model for you, or they can learn what's going right and what's going wrong, and trade stories back and forth. Okay, so wow, that's super cool. I love it that's kind of in the works.
I'll keep you posted.
Yeah, please do. Well, I'm bummed that I missed the kickoff. So you just kicked off it was the
Maybe we
ribbon
need to
cutting.
call our conference the Reinvention of Healthcare or something. I'm gonna put
Right. Well, hey,
note
maybe we could
as I'm sitting here looking
work a
at your
deal,
sign.
a branding deal between us or something. But that would be cool. And maybe I could help you, promote it or something like that. Who
Yeah.
knows? But yeah, you just kicked off. So you just had this ribbon cutting for the actual school, which I was missed. I was kind of bummed that I couldn't come to the meeting because I had a doctor's appointment, as you know, which I was treating a medical emergency that happened when I was over in Israel. The nurse and Melissa she couldn't help herself and she was helping me, which I appreciate. A guy guiding me. I had a little foot issue over there, but and I was taking care of it. So bummed that I missed that the ribbon cutting. It looked fabulous, well attended, and nice press for that event. And thanks for sharing about these things that are happening. So we got a few minutes left on the podcast, but there's always a couple questions that I'd like to ask people towards the end here. And one is about technology. So, you're obviously an innovative thinker. You're ready to kind of, blow up and change the system because it needs it. It's, pull it back from the precipice before it goes over the edge, right? In terms of the new nursing school, or in terms of maybe personally how you think about technology, how is that informing you or pushing you, or, how are you going to integrate it knowing that, hey, we got to look forward, we got to figure these things out? What gives you angst about it, or where the opportunities lie, do you think, in regards to technology these days?
Well, I mean, technology advancement, especially during the pandemic, we embraced it for the first time in healthcare.
Right.
When we've been asking, particularly physicians to embrace telehealth now this is not new, right? This has been around. And they're like, no, I need to lay hands on my patients. No, I need to see them in the office. It's just the way they were trained and what they're used to. And, the COVID came around and everything shut down. And they're like, oh, how quickly can I get up on telehealth? Right. And it's funny, a lot of it, psych has done it for a long time and it works really well for them and their patients. But the adoption still of telehealth, adoption of technology, especially in healthcare, is so slow. Part of it is a reimbursement and payer, right? Part of it is culturally, it just isn't adopted. But I have to say, technology, we've got Glassdoor AI, which is writing provider notes. And, you've read the articles, it found some rare disease and diagnosed somebody with something, right? And so I think at this point, as a provider of healthcare, both and a consumer of healthcare, I think we've got to really get on to what technology is going to assist us in improving our access and getting to more patients when they need it. And it's there. We can remotely monitor, we all have wearables. We're all wearing Garmin's and Apple Watches and, Fitbits, that are tracking what we're doing. And we've got to, we have ways to look at that information and really begin to holistically take care of patients much better. We just have very little adoption. And so in segments. So, but as I love technology, I think it's there to assist us, but we need our processes to go along with technology. And I think that's where the disconnect is. So we need to make sure that we're just not saying, here's the technology, but how do we use the technology? How do we make sure it's implemented appropriately, that we've got processes in place? We're not just giving it to those that can afford it, right? If we're going to do telehealth, how do we make sure the rural areas, have access to Wi-Fi or Bluetooth or, so we just need to be mindful of it. I think technology is coming out like a fire hose. I love it. We should adopt it. We need it, but we need to put processes in place to make sure it's feasible for everyone. It's not creating more, disparities in our health system than we already have.
I gotcha. Yeah. I totally agree. And I love their sort of operational kind of thought process on that, right? You're like, hey, we got to make the system work. let's get on with the technology, but we got to make the system work. In regards to maybe just share you just some of my experience in the engineering tech world, where oftentimes the early adopters are people that might say lower end or have less access, whatever, because they're not attached to the current system at all.
Mhm.
Okay, so like when cell phones happened, when satellite TV happened, et cetera, like in particular, my own experience of my own family, for example, my parents are from West Virginia, rural West Virginia. They grew up in a town of 300 people. I have a master's degree. I'm working for a corporation. My cousins had cell phones already for years.
Mhm.
They had satellite dish TV for years because they're not attached to the traditional grids of any kind.
Right.
And I think your notion of being concerned about the equity part is cool, but I guarantee you, when you start really trying to implement that, they're going to be the early adopters, and it's going to have a massive impact for them immediately, more so than just the average person in the average level of income. So that's some good news, I think.
Yeah, no, it's just getting them access to it and being able to pay for it.
Yeah, so that's super cool. Well, all right. So I have one more question before we get out of here today. Thanks for your time, by the way. And that is, can you share with everyone who's listening what I call a reinvention revelation? So through your latest reinventions here, which has been like crazy, you're newly, crowned DNP, you're starting a new nursing school. You just had this incredible experience of, getting in touch with your roots and seeing innovations happening in Israel. Like, can you share with someone, that might be thinking about trying to reinvent themselves in some way? How would they go about doing it? What have these recent experiences done for you?
I wasn't ready for that question. The thing that comes to mind though is I think it's about being open. I kind of made a commitment to myself, like, if I get an invitation, and even though it seems like something crazy, like one of my best friends was like, for my 40th birthday, I want you to go to Sedona with me on a retreat. I'm like, oh yeah, perfect. Are we getting facials and massages? And she's like, no, it's not that kind of retreat, but we'll get acupuncture and, oh, okay. Well, it ended up being regression therapy, life coaching, acupuncture, spirit animal, and I just went open-minded and just stayed open. And I feel like when you're open to receive, I do feel like the universe is kind of give you cues or push you in the direction that you need to go. And in that time it was refining, I think, my purpose and having time to reflect on what that meant to me, and then being open, to what that meant to me. So I think as you're reinventing yourself, it's a process, and it's not one like all of a sudden I woke up and I was like, oh, I know what I want to do now, right? And
right.
You could hear my journey. So I think it was being open to reinventing myself. It's being open to being wrong, right? So I've been wrong, and being open to new ideas and letting a little bit, if 80 some percent of our body is water, let it kind of move like water, right? Try and find the less friction points and move where you're getting pushed to move in a lot of ways, obviously within reason. But you don't need to be like, into bad decisions. But I think when you feel like it might be the right thing, give it a whirl.
Right. Well, I like that. And, like you said, keeping your mind open, I think that's the key. And so I keep trying to look for experiences for myself to keep my mind open. So that was one of the reasons why I ended up on the trip. I'm like, I don't know anybody. I was really super nervous to go, and everyone turned out to be just 100% amazing people. It was really kind of a mind-blowing experience for me. It's cool. And so I'm super glad I got to meet you, got connected to you. And I'm sure we'll continue our conversations about, the system and innovation or whatever at some point. And I got a few people I want to connect you with. So we have to keep talking about that.
Oh, we will.
Okay, cool. Well, thanks for being on the podcast, like I said. And talk again soon. Thank you for listening to Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast. If you want to hear more, join our mailing list at jimjimsreinventionrevolution.com. See you next time, and remember, the revolution has just begun. So dig in, embrace the process of reinvention, and start realizing the success you've always dreamed of. Hey revolutionaries, if you enjoyed today's episode and today's guest, let them know by commenting on their Facebook page, finding their Twitter handle or Instagram feed, and letting them know you heard them on Jim Jim's Reinvention Revolution podcast, and tell them what you got out of the episode, what you really liked, or how they inspired you. I know they would get a kick out of it and will help others find the same value that you found.